Victory Monday edition of the program. How you living, Z?
It is so good to be in your presence as a human.
At the CCMC.
That's right, the CCMC, and to have you back. And so we're about to embark on, I think, what's going to be a pretty interesting offseason for the Cleveland Browns. You ended the season on a high note with a win, some great individual performances, and honestly a good team performance in that one for the Browns. But, you know, this season wasn't what it was supposed to be, and now that reality is firmly set in.
Yeah.
The fact that two teams that, as Browns fans, you had to feel like you were better than, a Raiders team that needed a last-second field goal to beat your practice squad quarterback on one day of practice, a Steelers team that beat you twice. I mean, you can't say it any other way than they went 2-0 against you, but you changed the outcomes of those games. You're in the playoffs. The Steelers are now in the playoffs. The unthinkable happened. Almost got what we had been wanting for all week. And, in fact, I think we were going to get it until Staley calls a timeout in one of the most dramatic games. You know,
Crazy.
they say this is the most dramatic season of The Bachelor ever. It was from 7 o'clock on. That was one of the most dramatic stretches of NFL football I can recall. The Niners-Rams game,
the Niners-Rams,
which was phenomenal. And Jimmy G, mad respect. He was awesome down the stretch. And then you get that game. It was awesome. It was fun for coming out of feeling, bummed that our game was not one of consequence, other than the fact that we gave Deke, I thought, just an absolutely tremendous and a befitting send-off for a legend of his stature yesterday at the stadium. Was incredible, naming the radio booth, the Doug Deacon radio booth. Big shout-out to Gibbe, huge P planner in this case. Gibbe and PT worked so hard to make this thing right for Deke yesterday, and it really was. It was awesome, and he was moved and touched, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
So you went to a lot of things there.
I went stream of consciousness. You got 38 talking points. Go. Respond.
Let's start with the last one.
Okay.
So I'm in the car en route to Hoops yesterday afternoon, and hear that, and then hear you do play-by-play, which was a fantastic.
Yeah, I got one play in there.
The kid out there shining. That was
Yeah.
great. You crushed it. Even did moving left to right. He puts him in motion. I mean, it was awesome. Great play call out of you.
Sad it went for like a yard. It would have been.
It didn't even matter. I was so excited to hear you do it. I didn't even care what the play was.
What if he broke a tackle?
Well, then that would have been
50, 40.
That's
30,
right. Then you would have got all that, and you were doing it from the sideline, so you have, your angles aren't
Tough
great.
perspective.
Tough perspective. I think you hit on when you think back on this, you think what had to happen yesterday was a win. It had to happen for a lot of reasons to at least end this season on the winning side, to end it on a good note, to have a happy ending, if you will. But also for Deke, it was appropriate that went that way for Deke, because that was a special day for him. He's one of the more consequential humans in the history of this organization.
Yes.
When you think about the time he's been here, I thought it was a wonderful gesture to name the radio booth after him.
Awesome.
I've certainly seen the videos by now of how moved he was by it. He's pretty stoic in general, and quick to deflect, and the sarcasm. He's so quick-witted. All that stuff is all there. It's all part of what makes him so great. But it was cool to see him moved the way that he was moved, because that's a humbling thing when that happens. And I thought the organization and you guys on the broadcast team handled it just superbly.
It was a special thing to be a part of. And Gibbe, we would love to have you chime in, since you were actually there in the booth. But it really was. It was a befitting tribute for a legend of his stature, a guy who's seen more Browns games than anybody, to know that radio booth, anybody who has the opportunity to step into it from now on and forevermore, will be walking into the Doug Deacon radio booth. You're walking into a booth of consequence, and it's named for a person who has occupied it more than anybody else on the planet.
And more than anyone ever will forever. That's
yeah.
never. You're never going to have that again. I mean, there's a generation.
I wouldn't think so.
No, there's a generation of broadcasters, and on a national level, there are several of them. Whether it's we talk about Al Michaels or Jim Nantz or Joe Buck, these guys, for various circumstances, and Deke is in a similar spot. They got these jobs in their 20s. And so you can work at a place for 50 years. I mean, Deke, player first, then broadcaster. But that doesn't happen anymore. You're not going to see that anymore, where you have that consistency of voice. I think that the voices of networks and all that stuff. Most of that'll come to an end when this group of guys runs out. You'll see far more free agency, and guys will bounce around. And I think to a certain extent you'll see that on the team broadcast sites. I mean, these are legendary voices right? Legendary voices, and that's what Deke is. And so, yeah, you're not going to see anybody work 50 years in an organization again. It's just not in the cards. Special for you had to be, Gibby.
It was really cool. I knew it was probably going to be a bit of a long day, definitely an emotional day for all of us. But everything went off without a hitch. I got to shout out Jeff McDaniel. A lot of the videos you saw last week were him.
Jeff did a great job. Awesome.
Especially the big tribute video.
Like 7 minutes.
Rob helped with the podcast and put that whole thing together. And then, just all the tributes. Deacon's phone rang nonstop. I met McCarthy yesterday. I met the Secret Service agent.
Oh, really?
Shake his hand. Yeah,
with
absolutely.
the bullseye shirt? He was there? Oh, that's great.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's like, it is a pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. I'm like, I believe it is me that has that pleasure, sir.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
A number of his college friends came in, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Some guys, former players with the Browns were in. His family was there. It just, everything came together. Again, it's not the season that we wanted, but or how it ended, but the fact that he was allowed to be the focal point, it allowed for him to be the focal point on such a day yesterday.
He was. It was
awesome.
The culmination of Deke Week, and a little peek behind the curtains. They had a certain time planned for when it was going to be, but then there were caveats, like if it was off of a touchdown, we won't do it at that moment. If it's
touchdown,
a player injury.
Replay or injury.
Yeah, and so it was supposed to be early in the second quarter.
Supposed to be the
first break of the second
quarter.
First break, second quarter was Brown's touchdown. Second break of the second quarter was an injury. So Gibbs would be like, nope, we're going to break. That's it.
And literally, so there's 4 people in the front row. You have a statistician, a spotter, Jim, and Doug.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to kick out 2 of those guys while the tribute video is playing before we go to the booth, because I've got to get a camera guy in. I've got to get Paul down there, and we have to have a photographer. And we're hiding this giant plaque in the booth.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So
like everybody turns around and they're getting no, stay. We're not going. And meanwhile, I'm in his ear going, if this runs long, you're going to have to call a play.
Oh, and it was running long. It was very apparent that it was going to be running long.
Right away,
oh,
yeah.
My good friend Doug Deacon, and he and I had talked through it. I said, look, there's going to be a tribute to you. We're going to come to the booth. Obviously, I didn't tell him what was going to happen.
It was his moment, though.
Jim's going to ask you, I need 10 to 15 seconds. I need 2 sentences. Think about who you want to thank. Deacon, who we all know sometimes can keep it short and sweet to the point.
Quick stop.
I'm pretty sure my guy Doug turned it into an Oscar speech.
I was going to say we needed Larry this year to be like,
he is not that guy. He's never been that guy.
Right.
And he started going. And
so when you start the problem is when you start naming names, then your mind starts to turn and you start to say, okay, I can't forget. I got to get every name.
And he did. God bless him.
He did. And he battled his way through it. He battled his way through it.
Yeah.
He had a couple of.
But that's the danger.
Yeah.
I always tell that to interns and stuff. Anytime when we used to have interns back in the day, I'd be like, you don't have to get so specific. Broad strokes. Because when you start trying to name names, then you panic about, my God, did I get everybody whose name I need to get? That's where you get into trouble. Naming names is tricky.
We literally rapped, and they snapped the ball.
Yeah.
All I heard in my ear was, it wasn't you. It was whoever was on the board was like, go. And I was like, all right, Browns first and 10 at the 21-yard line. Got 2 receivers to the left.
They're changing out stuff. Jim's putting his headset back on. He's, I want it. I go, relax. You'll get it after the play.
Yeah.
Because they were already he'd already thrown the ball.
Because he didn't realize, because they didn't have their headsets on, so they could hear that he was handling it.
Right.
And we had kind of talked through it, but there was so much going on in the booth leading
we
up.
We had talked through it, and I was like, oh, maybe I will get I was kind of pumped about the opportunity.
Yeah,
but then when it happened, and the guy's like, go, I'm like, oh, this is really happening.
I guess I'll do this
Let's
now.
do it now. We're in shotgun, 2 receivers, a left, Jarvis in the slot, moving in motion, right to left cross formation, a quick little wide receiver screen, tackled for about a 1-yard gain. Jim, back to you.
I was going to say.
Since when, by the way, when you're doing
got a
play-by-play, do you do it in the voice of the kid?
Well, and this is a recreation of it.
Then
right.
use it the voice of the kid. Go ahead, give it.
No,
Let me
but
tell you
literally,
something.
The transition, you threw it back. I didn't even have to tell you. You just went right back. I was like, great.
Huge B.
I couldn't get – I was literally hiding under the table because I had to get out of the camera shot in the stadium.
Yeah.
And I would have been right behind the guys. And I'm like, I can't be behind them. Spano's to the left of me. I can't really go too far, but because I've got to be able to talk to Zegura to cue him.
Yeah. Well, it was great.
It did.
It was really, really cool.
It was
cool.
awesome.
And that's
Shout out to Kyle Millen and Carlos at the stadium. You know, they scripted it out. Kevin Durley set up all this fancy gear, and it looked good, it sounded good, it worked really well.
And shout out to JW and Jenks for senior leadership here for going afterwards, and they had a nice little ceremony and a suite for him, and gave him some parting gifts and a framed Deke jersey with a very cool plaque on it about his 50 years with the Browns. It was just like it was an awesome day. It was, like I said, it was befitting of his stature, which was hard to do, I think, to honestly pull off something that would be commensurate with what he's done and meant to this organization and this team. And I think they did it.
It's
So,
hard to
kudos.
land the plane on all that stuff because there's so
Yes.
much you want to do, and it can
Yes.
become – sometimes it's too much. Sometimes you don't feel like it's not enough. Like landing the plane in that can be tough, and it felt like the plane was landed here safely. So that was a big moment. I think that's – when I look back on it, that's what I'll think of, and I think most of us will, right? I mean, you'll look back on that, and you won't look – I don't even know if you'll remember the win or loss. You'll just remember it, for Deke, and then we get into all of the things that come next, and this is exit interview day, and so we've got all sorts of guys talking, and we'll have some of the information on that as it goes along. One other thing I wanted to mention, John Telich, final sign-off at the stadium yesterday. I mean, I know he's got another month or so at Fox 8, but last time covering a game at Fox 8, he's been there forever, 40 years, and one of the good guys in the business, period. And his last game covering a Browns game as well. So it goes in the books 21-16, so a win there. You end the season at 8-9. I do think, one of the things you said in the stream of consciousness was there is the poison pill of the Raiders. There's a poison pill of the Steelers that they get in. I mean, it's that was and by the way, I came in the booth. That was so kind of you, Gibby, to let me come in the booth for the Steelers game. I was at the Steelers game, and when I did the pregame and got in the booth with Doug and with Jim and with you guys, and that was so cool. But you think back to that game and you think, my God, how did we lose that game?
15-10.
And that's the thing as you're watching the NFL yesterday and you're seeing who's in and who's out, and you say to yourself, good grief, how, right? And that's something we'll have to wrestle with only an entire offseason.
That's right. Only we don't get the chance to play again until September 2022, and here we are, January 10, 2022. So we got
to wait
a minimum 8 months.
Yeah, it's going to be a long wait. And there's a lot to get to. You mentioned the wild final weekend in the NFL that provided some of the craziest things. By the way, this is like, I want to say it's like 7 or 8 times in the last 10 weeks that a double-digit favorite lost by double digits.
Why can't the Colts win in Jacksonville? Why?
Jacksonville is like 4-29 in the last however many 3 years or whatever. Their 4 wins are all over teams over 500 and twice over the Colts.
Not even not win, but get dismantled.
Bombed.
And from the get-go.
No, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. This is, you say to yourself, makes sense of the NFL. Good luck. I don't know what to tell you. I do think it's going to make for some of the most fascinating playoffs that we've ever seen. I mean, I do think it's an anyone win situation. One thing we should do before we get out of this first segment here is I do have the results of the over-under.
Oh, no. Gibby and I were talking about we don't even remember anything. All I know is I won the temperature one.
Are we sure about that?
Yeah, according to my official Mr. Sable.
Dude, it was freezing.
I muted that conversation because you guys I kept waiting for texts from the booth, like when security was bringing the Haslams up.
Right.
He told on
you guys
himself
are just
already.
Non-stop talking, and I'm like, I got to mute this.
How do you
'cause I
mute a
keep looking at my
conversation
phone.
that's me, Beau, you, and the Hoff? We're going to have to talk about this at 2 o'clock. Hoff, I guarantee it's the first time the Hoff's ever been muted.
Hoff does not get muted.
He does. He's the Hoff.
Yeah.
Well, I had to yesterday.
Too much going on.
So I could get my job done.
All right. So here's where we stand. So heading into the over-unders, Week 18. Zegura 33 and 37. Gibbe
I can
35
assure you
and
I was
35.
not taking a knee.
Okay? So, no, you did not. No, you went all in.
I was trying to take a knee for you, and
No,
you
You
rejected
wouldn't take it. You
No
rejected it. So, our first category was team rushing yards. We settled on 128.5.
Rough for me.
Zegura over substantially. Gibbe under.
Dearness almost did it by himself. Won the
Correct.
$1.23.
The next stat, the next category we did was passing yards, 208.5. Zegura went over. Gibbe went over.
I did.
Big miss there. We were on track.
Game day
Didn't we have a
kick.
$1.50 at half?
Cruising. Yeah,
Yeah, we were
didn't
cruising.
happen. Game day kickoff temperature, 35.5. This is a good job out of me. I nailed this number. It was 35 officially at 101.
We're tied.
Who did you?
Zegura
No names, please.
under. Gibbe over. So right now we're knotted up.
With
Two to go, and I don't.
2 to go.
I couldn't tell you the categories.
Sacks,
Oh,
interceptions, fumbles.
Oh no!
Zegura
It's over for me. Gibbe wins.
under. Gibbe over. And finally, actual
It's a
over
tie.
under.
It's a tie.
Look at the big brain on Brett. The actual over under 38.5. Gibbe over. Zegura under. It's 37. It's a tie.
Wait a minute. No,
Wait,
no,
what?
no. Like,
It's a tie.
But if I took the
Wait.
under.
no. So
It's a tie.
how many?
You had the under. He had the
What
over.
was the total record for the day?
You had 2-game lead on him.
Yeah.
He got 3 right. You got 1 right.
Hold on.
You both go
Hold on a
36
second.
and 39.
I don't think.
Hold on
I
a
think
second.
That's off.
Aren't sacks, interception, fumbles under?
No, it's over.
We had
4
more-
sacks. You had a fumble. That's over. It was 4.1. That gets you to 5.
We didn't have a fumble recovery because the possession never changed on Jadeveon Clowney's. That's why it stayed third down. If we recovered the
Hold
fumble
on,
and
hold
then
please.
lost the fumble, it would have been first down for them because we would have had possession.
Hold on.
Oh
Go to the
my
official
God, did I
Wait a minute,
steal
no,
this?
It's still a forced fumble.
Did I
On the official stats, it
It's
says
a
we
forced
do have a
fumble.
fumble.
forced recovered is a
It
turnover?
says number
No.
and lost. It gives us 2 and 1. 1 lost.
We lost one.
A forced fumble.
Yeah, we lost a fumble that they
The
picked up
forced
and
fum-
scored.
The forced
Hold on.
fumble is
It's still a turnover.
a turnover.
Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second.
Oh my God! A clerical error is so on brand for this show.
Where does it
Are you
even say
kidding me?
turnovers?
Are you kidding me? If this could be a clerical error,
Where does
We
it
may have
even
to go to
say
the league
turnovers
office.
on this thing?
Looking at the
Ask
final
Annarella.
defensive stats.
Okay.
It's a forced fumble in there.
Yes, but we didn't recover it. Forced fumble just means you knocked the ball out. It doesn't mean that you recovered it. That was not called a
I
fumble.
don't. I don't even. This is so on
Fumble
brand.
recoveries.
Fumbles.
Hold on. Fumble
Sacks,
recoveries.
interceptions,
Zero.
fumbles.
Zero fumble recoveries.
It's sacks,
Zero.
interceptions, fumbles though.
And we had no interceptions.
But we did
Wait,
force a
we
fumble.
forced
No,
a
we
fumble.
didn't. No.
That's a forced
Get
fumble.
Annarella in here. Annarella's complete. A fumble it counts as a turnover. You can't call it just you force a fumble and then they fall on their own
I don't know
ball.
what we're gonna do with this because the
I've
category
won.
is- the
I've
cate-
won.
I don't know
I've
either.
won. Victory. Get it, Annarella. Get him in here.
This is tricky. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what we do here.
What do you mean? We didn't force a turnover.
The category is sacks, interceptions, fumbles. You forced a fumble.
Annarella wants to know what is the question.
The question is total number
We
of
didn't have a
sacks,
fumble.
interceptions, fumbles for our
Hold on a
defense.
second. That-
I'll handle it, sir. I'll
In
handle
Arizona,
it.
we
No
forced
leading.
4
No
fumbles.
leading. We're
They
not
recovered
leading.
all of them.
Hey,
That's
We're
not
not
a
leading.
turnover. It's
Kill his
sacks
mic.
and turnovers.
Kill his mic.
It's sacks and turnovers.
We have to have an unbiased
It's
opinion.
sacks and turnovers.
Unbiased.
It's sacks and turnovers. But you
The Annarella.
turnovers.
Annarella.
Shut
The
up.
number. Stop. We're getting an official ruling. The category is sacks, interceptions, and fumbles. Sacks, interceptions, and fumbles. The number is 4.1. So if it's more than 4, that would be over for us. If it's less than 4, if it'd be 4 or less, then that's under.
You may not ask a question.
Annarella, how do you read this? How do you read this?
4.1.
Yeah. It's over. Annarella says over.
We didn't recover a fumble. We had no turnovers. It's supposed to be sacks plus turnovers.
No,
It
that's
doesn't
not the
say
category. It's
turnovers.
sacks,
Okay,
interceptions,
so you're
fumbles.
saying in the game
Sacks,
against Arizona where we
interceptions,
forced 4
fumbles.
fumbles,
We've
we
never had
counted
this
that?
come up before. We've
Yes,
never had
because
this come
it's
up before.
actually a fumble.
We've never
It's
had
a
this come up
turnover.
before.
Yes, we had no turnovers.
We had 4 sacks. So the question is over/under is sacks, interceptions, fumbles.
That's the category.
According
That
to
would
the
be like
category,
saying
we
if
forced a
Jacob
fumble
Phillips
and had
dropped
4
interception
sacks.
counts as an interception in this. You have to have a
Correct.
turnover.
He just said a forced fumble is not a turnover, but it doesn't say in the over/under turnover.
Dude, it's always sacks
a
plus
fumble.
turnovers. That would be
That
like when we
fumble
played.
like a
Hold on,
20-yard
Anarella.
loss.
When
The
we
apples
played
for apples
Arizona,
would be this way.
we forced 4 fumbles in that game. Kyler dropped the ball 4 times. He recovered all of them. Are you saying in that game we would have gone over because of 4 times that Kyler dropped the ball on the ground and recovered it himself?
I don't remember that week. But here's the other problem here is that the other problem where this category runs into trouble, we've never had this before in all these years, is a situation where you intercept a pass but then fumble it. So then
You would
is that,
still get the interception.
but why would you get the interception there? Because
That's
then
a
that
change of possession.
right, but
This was
a change of
It
possession.
was not. That was not how it was scored.
But didn't he recover it first?
Yes.
If-
Yes, he did.
And then
he fumbled the ball back.
so there's your change
Hold,
of possession.
please. And
No,
Anarella
You
knows.
just got
No.
crossed up.
I'll tell you how you know it wasn't a change of possession. If we recovered the fumble and were given credit for possessing the fumble and it was a change of possession, and then as he's running it back, it's punched out, then they recover it, it would be first down for the Bengals at that point because we had taken possession. Then there's a turnover, another turnover, it would be first down. That was a sack and a fumble forced, but that was ultimately deemed to be recovered by the Bengals, so it was 3rd and 33 or whatever it was. It never went to us. I feel like I'm arguing something that is clearly a fact. Like it says 0 on fumble recoveries. We never recovered a fumble.
No, I'm not disputing that.
But we've never counted a
The
fumble
question
that's
is the forced fumble count as
The tricky and then the tricky part
It's
of
not
this
even
is the
tricky.
play. The play is tricky
it
because
was
it was
always-
recovered and then not.
it was always sacks plus
We're not
turnovers
sure
is
in
what the number
over-under
has been.
if it's considered. We never talked.
All right,
takeaways.
listen. We're gonna we'll get an official ruling on this. With yesterday's win, Tito's Handmade Vodka is proud to support the Cleveland Browns through the Tito's Victory Vodka program with a $1,000 donation to Wags for Warriors, helping provide service dogs for veterans at no cost to the veteran. Thank you, Tito's. Remember to please enjoy Tito's Handmade Vodka responsibly. Sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka, 80 proof Tito's Handmade Vodka, 40% alcohol by volume, distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, crafted to be savored responsibly. We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll also go around the league. We're off and running. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Elk and Elk, serious lawyers, serious. We need the guys from Elk and Elk. Call 1-800-ELK Ohio for a free case review. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. So here, there's some amazing stuff on this that I just think is awesome. And it is so on brand for the show that it could be a clerical error, a phrasing issue that could lead to this. Here's one from Shuggy Brown who says, it's amazing that the entire season is coming down to a single phrasing nuance. Nathan is right, though. It wasn't scored as a possession change for the Browns. That is followed by this one from Shoestring. He says, Nathan, dude, I'm going to have to turn you off. It's one thing to be competitive, but you're trying to change the category from sacks, fumbles, and interceptions to sacks and turnovers, which you have tried to do. But in the spirit of your spirit may be right. The play was not a turnover, but it definitely was a fumble. It counts, which tells you all you need to know about Twitter, that you can absolutely find anybody to figure any side of anything. The real issue here is on the wording. That's kind of the trouble. The spirit of the category, I think, would benefit you.
I would say that we've never at any point brought up.
I can't believe it's come to this. It's just a remarkable thing.
It's
never been an issue.
Well,
It's
we've never
called a
brought
turnover,
up
not a force over.
Yeah, I mean it's been it's one of those things that's never.
Is that
happened.
helping your case?
I don't know. I was kind of just reading Twitter.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you got to be careful with
But we have never discussed fumbles that were forced and not recovered in the history of this
So this is
category.
Kevin Costa, who's a great friend of yours who you read many times.
I'm sure
Technically speaking, it would be over based on the wording, but the spirit of the rule is clearly for turnovers. I think the only way to settle this is a bonus playoff over-under. It really is great.
I mean, I pulled off the Grays comeback at a time. Right now, Gibby, you're like the Chargers, and I'm like the Raiders. I was fully prepared to just kneel down and allow you to have this moment of glory. The world just wanted Chesty Gibby, and then the first category you had, you went against me when all you had the advantage. All you had to do was try to tie me as much as possible.
Oh, I was all in. I wasn't. I was going to play the week out the way I have played it out for the previous 17 weeks. That it put me in this position.
This is hilarious. I'm happy that so many people are listening and have gotten into the spirit of the space. Just remember this. At no point during the season, when we went through a game, did we try to account for the number of times the ball was on the ground but not recovered.
Yeah, I
that
think,
would have put the numbers
I think
over
the number
many times.
I think what's tricky is forced fumble. That's the tricky thing because you do force the fumble. And then the way that play happens only adds to the confusion of it.
But
because
a tipped
the way
pass
it was scored,
is not nearly in the
well,
same
no, that's not the
regard as
same.
an interception.
The same would be the apples to apples. Truly, would be the interception. I mean, I don't even know because
it's not because that's a change of possession,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like that one was yesterday. I'm surprised it wasn't scored that way. I know it wasn't.
Had it been, I would have lost. The funny part is I was telling you in the break is once you said that I had, in my mind, you were saying that I had won this one already. Right. And then I thought I was on the other side of the over-under and that I lost the over-under, but it turns out I won that one too. And then I was like, wait a second.
Right. Yeah.
What has happened here?
Crazy. Crazy day.
So have I officially lost?
Well, I don't know what to do.
You know what?
This
is what I want to do.
It's either a tie or you definitely didn't win. You definitely didn't win.
Can I make a ruling?
It either tied or lost, one or the other.
Can I make a ruling? Because we were robbed of a great tie last week. Or last night, really this morning, technically.
Yeah.
I want to call this the great tie of Cleveland Browns Daily, a tie of love and fellowship.
Bring people together.
And then next week, let's just take it all the way to the Super Bowl, Gibby. Let's just say we're taking the over-unders of the postseason. Browns are in the postseason, over-unders.
Over-unders move on. Continue on. Overtime for the over-under.
Tied.
Are you just going to pick a game and an over-under?
No, maybe I'll use the whole weekend. Maybe there'll be 10 categories.
You can do whatever
the whole weekend.
And for the sake of clarification, going forward, if there ever happens to be a sack,
change of possession needs to be in. It needs to be fumble recovery. It needs to be sacks
or turnover,
fumble
plus
recovery.
Turnovers. Just called sacks plus turnovers.
Sacks plus turnovers. Yeah, that would be the way to do it.
Which is what it's been.
Yeah, but it wasn't worded that way.
Right. But we've never discussed a non-recovered fumble in the history of the program.
No, we haven't. It's never come down to it. It's always been I don't even know if there's been a week where that was ever the issue. Usually sacks.
You have your notes,
take
right?
care of it.
Do you have your notes?
Yeah.
All right. Go back to Arizona.
We were actually worried that it was going to take money out of Jadeveon Clowney's pocket.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Because there was a big bonus lined up for
When
that.
did we play Arizona?
Nana believes I'm being robbed. Thank you, Nana, for having your sons back.
She birthed you.
It was
what
week
is it?
6.
Yeah, I mean, that's leading the witness.
Week 6. Well, she's an unbiased observer.
Oh, look. Your minestrone's in here.
A little minestrone. Go to week 6. This will settle it once and for all.
It's all in here.
Week 6 is going to settle it once and for all. Because
I got all sorts of plays in here I'm running.
The accounting of week 6, I will abide by its ruling because that's the one where there's.
Well, the question is all right, so here's week 6.
Okay. What were the sacks? What was the over-under on sacks, fumbles, interceptions?
No, this isn't week 6. I don't know. Maybe I tore out week 6. It's not in there. It wouldn't matter anyway, though. Very likely. Because
in that one it would have because we had 2 sacks.
But you guys could have both been on the same side of it.
No, not for changing it, but how it was scored is what I'm saying.
Right, but I might not have scored it. Oh, you're saying how it would have scored. I'm sure it was scored forced fumble, but not turnover.
No. What I'm saying is in that week we had 2 sacks,
right?
0 interceptions, 0 actual takeaways,
right?
But 4
forced
fumbles. So
was that
the over would have hit if we were counting?
If we were counting it.
Forced fumbles.
Yeah.
Because there's no way the over was 1.5.
No, I wouldn't think.
No.
We have 6 job openings in this league today. By the way,
air lights on. Thank you, everybody.
6 job openings. So you had Jacksonville earlier. We had the Raiders for a while. You had Vic Fangio yesterday. You add the Bears, the Vikings, and Miami to the list today. Both the Bears job and the Vikings job, guys, are head coach and GM. So that's football czar situations there.
And I think Gettleman is now stepping down as GM of the Giants.
But Judge is not.
Judge
which
is still there.
Incredible that he's not. So you have right now 6 jobs. That might be it. Every single one of these, by the way, are pretty attractive for various reasons. I mean, there's a lot of young, talented quarterbacks here where you could have a chance to mold them. You're talking about Fields and Lawrence. You add to that Denver situation where you're a quarterback away. Who knows if Rodgers wants to play there, or maybe that's where Russell Wilson wants to play. It's hard to imagine, but that's still in the mix as well. The shocker, I think, is Flores, though, who, by the way, they have 2 first-round picks.
A lot of people think that means that Harbaugh is going to Miami.
Stephen Ross, who's a big-time Michigan booster, said today, I love the University of Michigan. I'm a big donor to the University of Michigan. I'm not going to be the one who takes Jim Harbaugh from Michigan.
He said that.
Oh,
so then
not.
So
it could be still he could go to Chicago, but I know for a fact that they've reached out heavily to Ryan Day to go be the coach in Chicago. So who knows? But the Miami one is wild. I mean, hasn't he won like 8 out of 9?
He went 10-6 last year. We nudged them out of the playoffs.
Right, and I think they won 8 of the last 9 because they lost 7 in a row, won 7 in a row, then they lost and then won. So they won 8 out of their last 9 with the quarterback that I don't think he wanted ever. And now he's on the outside looking.
Maybe that's why he's gone.
Could be, could very well be. But 6 jobs open, and the other thing that struck me was Minnesota, probably one of the most stable organizations in the NFL over the last 15 years. You think about franchise mainstays that were there. You think about George Payton, who's now running Denver as the GM there. Zimmer and Spielman both have been there for a long time. Spielman's been there for a really long time. And then
wasn't
our
Spielman
guy,
like the executive of the year not that long ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised on that one. And then
he's drafted
our guy Stefanski was there for 15 plus years. I mean, they had so much stability there.
Yeah,
and now it's all starting over. And they got a team that's kind of a weird start over. They have some really good young players, but they got an older quarterback. I wonder what led to this in Minnesota. Did feel like Zim was about done.
Yeah, but I mean, they've done a pretty good job in the draft, I feel like.
I would agree.
A lot of homegrown talent, well scouted and sourced. I mean, Justin Jefferson, you think what was going down is just amazing. It's just incredible. I think it's stunning, but as people are talking about, with the quarterback position, with all the turmoil that's going on in some of these places and new jobs, you're going to have, it sounds, Kirk Cousins, I would imagine, is somebody starting fresh is going to maybe want to start fresh at that position. Trey Lance, they traded too much to not play Trey Lance a second season, so
right.
Garoppolo can flat out play. He's going to be in the mix. It's going to be an interesting offseason, not to mention the big 3 of Rodgers, although I don't understand. It's still hard for me to get my head around why he would ever leave.
Doesn't it seem like everyone's kind of backing off that with him?
Rodgers?
Like most people think he's like, oh, yeah, his situation's pretty good.
Russ, it feels like, is going to be on the move.
Yeah.
And then Watson, the report was yesterday that he'll be traded before free agency, which is March 16th, 18th, somewhere in there.
Right.
So
that's, if those four all change teams. And by the way, this is not a quarterback-heavy draft. It's not a great quarterback draft. I don't even know who would be the first guy off the board at the quarterback position in this draft. There's no sure thing. I don't know if there's that many guys who you'd grade as like first-round franchise guys. So you say that about Minnesota, but who knows what direction they end up going with,
right?
In Minnesota. So that's a fascinating thing. A couple other things from yesterday's play. We mentioned you mentioned this off the top in the stream of consciousness. The move at the end of the Raiders-Chargers game. Do we believe that the Raiders were happy with a tie?
Yes,
that's how I thought too. I mean, I
think if they had their druthers, they would have wanted to avoid Kansas City, but the risks of something crazy happening and then them losing at that point was great. I mean, you have the guy talking to Eckler who says we were going to kneel. Eckler goes, really? We were going to kneel if you didn't call timeout. Eckler says, really? He says, yeah. And then Eckler has a look of just complete disgust and disappointment on his face.
Right. So instead, the Raiders are in, and they get the Bengals.
Yeah.
So you think about Cincinnati's path here and what they could do with that offense. They're the 4, so they would get the Raiders and then Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's very winnable if there's not a swap.
You need chalk to happen, right?
If chalk happens, that would be the path for Cincinnati to make a run to the AFC Championship.
The one game that I feel pretty comfortable that the Chiefs will beat the Steelers.
Yeah.
It's the game will be the Bills-Patriots. That could throw it off. But, yeah, if you feel pretty good about that's your path, you wouldn't have to see a Mahomes or a Josh Allen until the AFC Championship if that's the way that it goes.
It's set up pretty good for Cincinnati.
Really,
the other way would have been them playing. Had it gone the other way, then it would have been them playing the Patriots. Patriots would have been the 5. They would have been the 4. So that would have been the path the other way. So now instead they get this path. Yeah, and this Raiders team, it's like, they've been through so much off the field. They had COVID, coach, Ruggs, all of that stuff, and somehow they've just plodded along and won games. I mean, when you saw them here a couple of weeks ago, there's no way you would have ever thought they were capable of this.
No, and they just kept finding a way. It wasn't always pretty, and then in this one, they got it done. And Justin Herbert, and despite the fact that Justin Herbert put on one of the most insane quarterback displays I had ever seen. I mean, he throws balls. There are only 2 people that I've ever seen throw the football the way that he threw the football on some of those throws yesterday. And I'm saying this is serious. This isn't me just being me. John Elway and Jeff George.
Well, you should put Mahomes in there because he has that type of hose.
He does, but his is different. These were just straight up like.
Well, I mean, Pats has that. He can throw those.
All right, fine.
He would be
add him in.
If you would put Pat Mahomes in the same category as Jeff George.
I'm talking about pure
arm strength. But I think Mahomes has that. I think he's got a whip like that where he can throw it from anywhere. Those would be the 2 guys.
Okay,
there aren't many is the point, though. And I think the thing that is crazy is to be that accurate. The one that ties it, the Williams dig, bracketed. He's bracketed.
Double teamed.
He's totally double teamed, and he just stuck it in the only place he could do. It was weird. I didn't watch the game in real time. I watched it this morning on a condensed version. Why could they not get anything going in overtime?
They just couldn't complete any passes on first, second, or third down. Then it was 4th down, and he completed. He was 6 on 4th downs. He was 6 of 6 for 108 yards, a touchdown, and a quarterback rating of 158.3, which, yes, is the max. On 4th down. On that final drive, it must have been 4 of them at least. And we're talking lasers. And to get it when they were down 15, Beau, he converted 4th and goal from the 21, I think, or 4th and 21 where they could have gotten a first down at the 2. He threw it somehow, just absolute rocket to a guy who caught it in between 3 Raiders.
Jeez.
I mean, these throws were otherworldly, but then on first down they could do it. Max Crosby was killing poor Storm Norton, but they did enough to get it up and down the field. You felt like you were going to get the tie we had all wanted. You had people in this crowd talking about ties. Michaels and Collinsworth were absolutely in the idea of the tie. And then it felt like a timeout, which stopped the clock. It just brought all that momentum to a halt, and it felt like watching it. It made the Raiders question
What are we doing?
Well, are they trying to stop us? Call another timeout? And now it is totally accurate. He let the time run down. They called the timeout after there were fewer than 40 seconds left on the clock so that they could have just still kneeled anyway. But the Raiders had lined up in a shotgun prior to the timeout. They come out under center and they run it. Now you could say all the Chargers had to do was stop that play. You'd be absolutely right. It was just a run up the middle. But it felt like there was something about it that changed their mindsets. I was still hoping, because I thought it would be the ultimate just cool move, is that they were going to snap the ball for the field goal, and the kicker, the holder, was going to, like Charlie Brown, loosey it, move it so he kicked it nothing, stand up, take a knee, tie, we go to overtime. Because that's how like it should have been. I felt scripted out at the end there. But clearly they were content to end it, and something about that timeout, it felt like change mentality. And there were screenshots that were cropped that said, oh, there's nobody covering a receiver. Not true. And as soon as I count, I'm like, wait, there's 9 guys here in the screenshot. There's 11 on defense.
Emmanuel Acho did a kind of a breakdown of it. And he said that the problem was he actually didn't need to change personnel according to him. Who knows? It's one guy on Twitter, but you think he'd know defense. And he said, look, he's got 2 linebackers on the field. He calls a timeout, and then he only had 1 linebacker on the field. So they were in the perfect defense for what the Raiders ran.
I think that they were calling a timeout. Did he say after the game, have you seen any quote? I mean, I'm sure he had to be asked. Why did you call that timeout?
I didn't. It was so late in the middle of the night, so
I went to bed. I was kind of like wired after that for a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like it. I think
I'm fully convinced that game ends in a tie if he doesn't call that timeout. And that's just my opinion. Nobody has to agree with it. That's just what I think.
I think that was one of the most stupefying endings, and I think what happened in Jacksonville maybe topped it. 15.5-point favorite, the Colts. They lose by 15. Beat Jacksonville, who gave up a half 100 to New England, 2 weeks ago? Do that, and you are in the postseason. They don't, and that opens the door for all of this chaos to happen.
Absolute insanity.
And, of course, Pittsburgh benefits. So that's where you stand on that front. Take a quick timeout. Before we do, the Browns Bundle, almost over. Participating Buffalo Wild Wings with the purchase of a Browns Bundle. Fans get a limited edition collectible Browns glass. The $14.99 Browns Bundle includes a 6-piece wing, fries, and Browns glass. Coming up next, we'll take a quick look at the playoff picture, where we stand at this point, and an opportunity for the team of my youth, I think, to make a little bit of a run in this thing. We will get to that coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. EOX Vantage has a local presence and a global footprint. It's trusted by some of the world's biggest brands. Here's a testimonial from EOX Vantage client Ed Scheel. Ed's the vice president of Skyward Specialty Insurance. He says, quote, "The tools we've designed with EOX Vantage are real business changers that open the door for us to all sorts of valuable opportunities and efficiencies. They help our team members stay on the same page while collaborating remotely, make it easy to communicate with customers, cut way down on manual data entry and the associated input errors, cut hours off processes and response times. Operationally," Ed says, "it's a brand new ballgame for us. I'm saying it can be for you, too, and I encourage you to learn more about EOX Vantage by visiting www.eoxvantage.com or call 216-298-1616 for more." So the playoffs are set, and I was thinking about the team of my youth, the 49ers, so they have a pretty favorable draw with
How pumped was your dad?
Hasn't been a great day for me.
No, not. No hot seat. No hot seat, Gibby.
Yeah,
no, I think
you've eked out a tie in the over-unders due to the holiday spirit and love and brotherhood.
This
Or just maybe a miswording or misreading, misrepresentation.
This
Well, we have a fact now. We have a
this
fact
is you look at this thing and you think of the matchup here. First of all, the AFC is wide open. I think we can all agree to that.
Yep.
I think Pittsburgh's the only team that feels like a for sure one and out.
Yep.
But everybody else, I think anybody could win it coming from the rest of those teams. But in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers as the 6 playing the way they're playing, getting Dallas.
I love it.
I like that a lot.
What a game. I mean, that's had to be
That's
some of the
40
seminal
years in the
moments of your
makings.
youth.
It was.
Dallas,
yeah. Dwight
Niners,
Clark,
yeah.
of course, yeah. Later years, the great
Laters.
Steve Young.
Which team was Dion playing for?
Which team was Dion playing for? The great Steve Young, later years. So, yeah, for sure.
How's
it
his
was
documentary? Oh, wait.
very good. It was a 30 for 30 on him, actually, I believe. But yes, that I like that one a lot. I think the NFC, aside from inside Tampa Bay, Philly seems really lopsided, but everything else in the NFC, anything could happen.
I think the Niners could have beaten Tampa. I think Tampa they would have been very nervous. They cannot stop the run.
No.
And Elijah Mitchell, that's what's so awesome about watching that team. What they do with Elijah Mitchell, then what they do with Debo. I mean, ran for a touchdown, had some big catches, throws for a touchdown. They had a drive where they ran it 8 straight times, then the one pass was an option to Debo. And he threw it for a touchdown to a guy who was so wide open he dropped the ball and then recaught it.
First time that the Rams had lost since being up double figures at half since McVay's been there.
It was
And
17-0.
Right, and obviously the Rams were playing for it because they could have played all the way to the 2 seed, right?
Yeah,
that was their
They dropped from 2 to 4.
right.
It was a big loss.
Yes,
And I think the 2 seed doesn't get enough play. Everybody talks about that 1 seed in the bye and home field, but the 2 seed gets 2 home games
Guaranteed.
before you have to go somewhere. And if the number 1 seed loses, the road runs through your place.
That's right.
I mean, as I look at this right now, I mean, to me, I think I could absolutely talk myself into San Francisco Green Bay NFC Championship game. I could talk myself into that.
No way.
I like the matchups. I mean, you got to go to Tampa and win, but like to Z's point, they have a tough time stopping the run.
Boo.
I don't even know what just
weekend
happened
with all the stuff
Do you
with
need
me
a medic?
No, that was
Like,
Boo, watch me drink my coffee.
Spumoni.
Niners, Spumoni. There was so much fun stuff over the weekend with the big, Montana games.
The
this weekend.
confusion.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
confusion. And
Yeah,
some
the-
guy was just like, if somebody had just jumped into the show, they would literally have no idea.
No idea what the hell
either
was
of your
someone still
backgrounds
corrects
are.
me every time I said the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Still corrects you every time, right? Yeah,
Always get a correction.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they did
that's
not.
true. That is true.
Go,
Yeah,
he's on a roll.
Montana State on a in the 1AA semifinal, undone by a quarterback injury on that first drive. So that was sad. Hate to see it.
Yeah.
Hate to see it.
a
But
fan.
nevertheless,
Hey,
not a
by
fan.
the way,
Yeah.
speaking of up toward that direction,
Okay.
Stevie's got a job.
Stevie's got a job. That was
Esteban.
a fun moment. Esteban
Ah.
makes it. Yeah. The great Zach gets his job in Minot, North Dakota. I've not been to
Godspeed, kid.
I've not been to Minot. Pack a parka would be my
Why
guess.
not? Why not? That's what I'm told.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know.
Listen, we're
Sports
like
director.
we've
Yeah,
had a
it'd be a good gig.
few. We've launched some careers in here. We need a new Stevie Gibbe. Let's make it in 2022.
We haven't had a Stevie since COVID.
The return of Stevies.
I believe we will have some Stevies.
Well, we'll see.
You deserve it. You need some. I
I
mean,
could use an assistant.
yeah.
Yeah, you definitely. Oh my
Be
God.
nice.
An
I think that's a
assistant
great
thrives.
word. Yeah.
You need an assistant. Yeah.
Assistant. to the honcho.
The idea that Stevie was Zach was named Stevie because of Kenny Powers Eastbound and Down Stevie, and then morphed into Esteban from The Life Aquatic. He's been eaten.
Swallowed whole.
Swallowed whole.
Chewed, no. Swallowed whole.
It's an incredible scene. Very incredible scene. Big wins coming up next. The Hoff will join us for the Joe Thomas Hour. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned and operated. Whether you join them as a customer or as an employee, you'll become part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. OBM, Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider, your Cleveland Browns. They've got all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. And with that, it is time for the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily. What was it like for you yesterday, pal, watching the game? How much of it did you watch? How engaged were you with it? We kind of said off the top, like, it just feels like it's always going to be remembered as the Deke game for us a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched the whole thing, and, it was an interesting experience because obviously playing for 11 seasons and not having a meaningful final game of the season throughout that entire career. Because even my first year, we were playing against the 49ers, my last game of the year, and it had already been decided based on what happened in the Titans-Colts game was if we got into the playoffs, not whether we won or lost. And so I'm kind of used to playing or watching those meaningless final week of the season games. And so there's a little less stress, right? There's a little less emotion involved. But I strangely enjoyed the game yesterday more than I expected. And I think partly it was because I enjoyed that it was Deke's final game. I enjoyed being part of that and sort of watching part of that. I enjoyed there was a little bit of a calm during the game. I thought the Browns were in control the entire game.
Yep.
So there was not that back and forth emotionally and the stress involved of, if we lose this game, we're out. And I think in the end, they ran the ball really well. Defense played really good. And it gave me a warm and fuzzy feeling going into the offseason that I was looking for. And so I think this is probably how a lot of Browns fans felt. Like I felt a little bit more satisfied than I expected after that game.
I think that's fair. It was a game in which the Browns were in control the entire time. They never trailed at any point. In fact, when it was 14-0, it felt like it was going to be a blowout. If it weren't for that Bengals defensive touchdown, you felt, okay, we've got this thing firmly in hand. You got to see Dearness Johnson have a nice game, run for the 123 yards. So I think it was calm. I do think it was great that we had the celebration of Deke to kind of give the game some actual meaning. And import, but I thought it was a good showing, and from as we've talked off on Browns Live, the fact that it says a little bit about the culture, guys showing up, and I want to single one guy out, and I want to get your take on it, Hoff, as well as you, Beau. Jarvis Landry turned in one of the best games of his season this year.
Yeah.
In a game where he's one of the few guys on our roster that's a made man. Same with Clowney, same with Miles, but I want to talk about Jarvis. He hasn't spoken to the media since Odell's left. We know that it's clear that he hasn't been that happy with some things here, right? But he's been an exemplary teammate. You've heard the way the players have gushed about him, the way he conducts himself. Donovan Peoples-Jones talking about what he means to that receiver room. And then for him to go out there and play a game like that where he looked – and by the way, both games he's played with Case Keenum looked like there was a tremendous chemistry between the two of them and have, a great game, 6 catches, I think 80 yards and the touchdown for Jarvis. That said, he could have done whatever he wanted in that game. He could have mailed it. He could have been like, I'm not even that interested in playing. There's a lot of swirling about, what the future holds for Jarvis with the Browns. But to me, one of the heartbeats of the team, and I thought seeing that performance off spoke volumes about who he is as a man and a player.
Yeah, it was really good seeing it from him. You saw fight from a lot of guys. I thought Dearness Johnson played a tremendous game. Nick Chubb, when he was in there, it seemed like he got banged up. I didn't hear the report, but on that last run where he had that big stiff arm, and then they gave it to him the next 2 times. It looked like he was kind of banged up, but you saw fight from him. And to me, that shows the culture that Kevin Stefanski has built, that even though it was such a disappointing season and you're going into this game with your backup quarterback and it's meaningless from a playoff implication standpoint, you still have some of your best players who seemingly would have every reason in the world to mail it in and just stay healthy and get healthy for the offseason. Like going out and giving great effort because this team and their teammates and these coaches are important to them. Like that's why you play hard in the last game of the season. Yeah, you want to go into the offseason feeling good, and it's kind of that first game of the next season, and everybody always has something to play for. If you're a veteran, you're proving you can still do it. If you're a young guy, you're proving you can do it. But more than all of that, I saw guys playing hard for each other, and to me that was a reflection of Kevin Stefanski and the culture that he has built and the positivity that we should feel as Browns fans about the direction this team is headed moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we've said, Nathan, you talk about Jarvis, like, I don't even want to consider him playing anywhere other than here. Like,
agreed.
I just want him in this uniform forever. I hope.
Yep.
I hope that that's the way that it goes. I hope he retires here. To me, when I think about what he represents as a person, the way that I mean, some of this is bias because we know him a little bit. We see him in here, but he is everything. You know, when he's on air with us to when he's not, what he is on the sidelines, what he is. You just want him here, and I think so much of the good that's happened for this organization, and we're in the middle of a really nice run for the organization. A lot of it starts with him and the acquisition of him, and so to see him do that was inspiring, and I hope it was inspiring from our young guys, and that's the type of leader he is on the field. So I hope that he's in that Brown 80 forever.
Same.
And that's the way that I see it going forward. Beyond that, Hoff, these are tough. Week 18 was crazy in the NFL, and we'll get to some of the bigger picture stuff around the league a little bit later, what happened in the Chargers and the Raiders game, and the Colts getting beaten the way they did, the 49ers as well. But take us through a little bit what it's like as a player. Like, what's the mindset when you're playing in a game like this of, do you give it your all? Do you just try to get out of it healthy? What's the veteran mindset for a game like the one that we saw? Because obviously, since they had Chase in on the one play to break the record, then he was done. What goes through your head playing in a game like that one?
So obviously there's a human side of football. I mean, they're amazing gladiators going out there with shields and helmets and stuff. But the human element says, like, once you get eliminated from the playoffs, it is tempting to make that vacation plan that, you were hoping was going to be in February, but now it's in January with the family. Go somewhere warm, get away from it all. And as soon as you get eliminated, all of a sudden, the travel agent sends you the email, hey, I know you were talking about Jamaica in February, but, there's some great deals right now. And your wife's saying, well, hey, we got this break from the kids. Let's go get somewhere warm after the season, and so there's part of you saying, like, I want to take care of that stuff. And a lot of times you do, but you also got to put that into a box because you still have a job to do, and you have to go out and be at your best, not only for yourself and for what your career looks like moving forward, but for those teammates. And the thing that I mentioned earlier on, like, this game is about more than just going out and playing well for yourself. It's about playing well for those other guys. And that was sort of the mindset that I always tried to take into those last weeks of the season. It's like, hey, me, Jarvis Landry, Myles Garrett, like, it doesn't really matter what we perform like in that last game of the season, but there's a guy that's next to me that might be playing for his job next season.
Yep.
Or for some other team that he's counting on me to be at my best. And that was a big motivator for me, why I always wanted to be out there, even when I was banged up the last week of the season, where I could have maybe sat down and started to heal myself or get that knee surgery a little bit earlier in the offseason. Like, I knew there was a guy that was next to me on both sides, and there was probably a quarterback and a running back behind me that were trying to make a career or make a name for themselves, that they knew that they were counting on me. And so I needed to be at my best. So yeah, you do make your plans once you get eliminated from the playoffs for that off-season vacation that you're waiting for and the kids are begging you to go on. But you put that in the box because your teammates are counting on you. And so you go into that game and you say, this is the mindset. Hey, if I do get banged up or something happens, I got 9 months or 6 months to get that surgery and to get healthy again. Like, it's going to be fine. So why not give every single play everything I possibly have? Because I owe it to my teammates who've been there for me the entire season.
And that's why you're the Huff and the consummate professional. And I think you saw a lot of that embodied by the guys out there on the field yesterday by the Browns. And, at some point this offseason, we'll talk about Dearness Johnson, because he continues, whenever he's been given the opportunity to be the guy, he runs at an elite level. And there's something special about the way he gets his pad so low over his legs that he laughs at hits coming from the side of him. He's an incredible back, and I think his story is incredible. And you wonder, he's a restricted free agent. We'll get all that offseason stuff. But at some point, we got to have a conversation about him, because you could tell the guys up front, they knew that that's what Dearness was trying to do for the third time this year, another 100-yard game. But you could see the way that they blocked for him and the way that he ran behind them. There's something special there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two things that pop into my mind when I watch Dearness is the vision that he plays with.
Yeah.
And his, slipperiness when he gets into his cuts. Like, he's so good at setting up his blockers and then finding those little holes and kind of sliding through it, whether it's sideways, whether it's backwards, whether he's crouching down and running behind his pads. And I think those linemen up front, it reminded me of earlier in my career. Jamal Lewis needed like 80 yards going in the last week of the season to get 1,000 to get a bonus. And then later on in my career, we had young guys like Dearness where you knew it was going to be their opportunity. They weren't the normal starter, but they were going to get a chance to be the feature back to kind of show themselves to the league at wide, because we knew in that building that they were too good to be a backup. And even though we wish that they would be able to stay here forever because it makes our team better, like you'd built such a relationship with that person because what they did throughout the season and the respect that you have for the work that they put in to get themselves where they are, that you wanted to give everything you possibly could in that last game of the season to be able to get a guy like Dearness Johnson that national exposure and one more opportunity, one more bite at the apple to make a stamp in the NFL to go be a starter potentially somewhere else.
Yeah, it feels like he's earned that with the way he's played. He's earned a lot of carries going
He's a
forward.
stud.
Yeah, he is. Really is.
We're crowded in the backfield. Like,
yeah,
very.
I think one thing, we'll get into this as the week goes along, but like I don't know if people realize how little Kareem Hunt played this year because of injury. I mean, that's a huge, huge knock on what happened this year was the fact that you didn't have Kareem. He's such a heartbeat guy on that offense. This game, Hoff, will most likely be remembered for being the final time Doug Deacon was in the booth, a booth that is now named for him. I know Deke is special to you. I've seen a lot of the interactions between you and him have gone around on social last week. When you think of Deke, when you think what he meant to you, what he means to the organization, what comes to mind? Is there a favorite story that you can tell that's appropriate for radio?
It's funny. A lot of reporters have talked to me this week knowing that this was Deke's last game, and they always put that caveat in there. Is there any stories that we can tell on radio that would be okay with Deke? Because he's old school, man. Like, he grew up in the days before PC was a thing. And, he grew up in an era in the NFL when there was no social media, there was no Twitter, there wasn't cameras following you guys around. So the times were a little bit different, and they definitely had a lot of fun when he was playing. But I'll just say that the thing that I'll remember about Deke is probably two things. One is just he was always such a great mentor to me, being that I played his position, I wore his number. But he was always so humble about everything that he did, and he had an incredible career. Was it 13, 14 seasons? I think it was 13 with the Browns. The franchise record for most starts. An incredible run of great performance. I think he made a Pro Bowl one time. And then he goes on and has an absolutely remarkable media career as the voice of the Browns, one of the iconic color broadcasters in all of pro football. But he was always so humble about it. And he was always so willing to lend an ear to me, especially when I was a younger player, about things that happened on the field. Now, the technique that they use and the technique that we use weren't always the same. So he wasn't exactly breaking down the X's and O's of the game. But what he could do is talk about what it's like playing in the NFL and the pressures of being a left tackle and the pressures of protecting for a quarterback and a running back and what it's like to be a Cleveland Brown. And I think he, more than anybody else in the entire franchise, helped me understand how special it is to be a Cleveland Brown and the responsibility of being one of the leaders of the greatest franchise in pro football. And so I really feel so indebted to Doug for doing those things for me. And the other thing I'll mention is he was just such a wonderful person when the crap was hitting the fan, as it so often did during seasons when I was on the team, that you'd come off the field, whether it be practice or a game, and he'd always be the guy sitting in the locker next to me, and he didn't have a microphone on. I know it was probably surprising to you guys, but he wasn't in the locker room during media time trying to dig up dirt on anybody. He was just sitting in there because I think he wanted some free drinks and he wanted to BS with some of the offensive linemen. But he would always be sitting there, and he would give you such great perspective in the NFL as a player when there's so much at stake on literally every single play, like careers, legacies. They're at stake every single play because of injury, because of performance, because like we saw last night and yesterday, one play throughout a season can make the difference between you made the playoffs and everybody got extensions and everybody's smoking cigars in the locker room, or you didn't make the playoffs and you got fired, and the entire course of your career is different. And so the stress and the anxiety can be so high. But to have a guy like Doug who'd been around so long to give you that perspective on everything that encompasses Browns and a career as an NFL player, but also just as a human being and a life after football, to me was almost even more valuable than any of the insight that he gave me on the field.
Beautifully said, sir. Absolutely
Yes.
beautifully said and appropriate for a great man like D coming from a Hoff such as yourself. Coming up next, we'll play a little word association with some players, some position groups for this season. You're listening to the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Gambling without setting limits on how much you're going to wager or how long you'll play is like a football team going into a game without a game plan. It's probably going to end up in a loss. Always set limits before you bet. Get more tips like this at keepitfunohio.com.
All right, Hoff, one of the things going on today in Berea, we even heard on Friday here at the Cross Country Mortgage Campus, are these exit interviews. And I was always curious, what goes on in an exit interview? Is it who's giving is it coach giving feedback? Is it a player giving feedback? Take us into that, and you probably have yours probably evolved as you were a young guy, a young Hoff who maybe was wasn't speaking up to the end where you were probably the one that everybody ran to in the locker room like, yo, Joe, just will you make sure you tell him this? Like, can we get some better food in there or something?
Yeah, no, I think exit interviews can, especially if you have a coach that we're expecting to be around, they can be very productive and you can get a lot done. I always use them, especially as I got a little bit older, to try to give the coach feedback on what is happening behind the scenes in the locker room, and what the players maybe want to make sure that the coaches understand what are the things that they think that they could do better. And obviously when you're a younger player, you don't feel quite as comfortable. So that's kind of the veterans' role of, hey, before those exit interviews, make sure they go around the locker room and get any input from any of the younger players or the guys that maybe don't feel like they have the pelts on the wall to be able to step up and say something. Talk to the captain, talk to some of the leaders in the different position groups, and bring those concerns or feedback to the coaches, because I mean, in the end, you are all in this together trying to win football games. And if the players are seeing something or have feedback, no matter how little or how big it is, that they feel like we can make this thing better together, like the coach needs to hear about it. And obviously, if it's something that's timely, that needs to be talked about during the season, then of course the captain, like myself or one of the other leaders on the team, should bring that to the coach right away, and we did. But if it was something that is better served sort of at the end of the year as you're kind of reflecting on the season as a whole, then those exit interviews are a great opportunity where the coach has the time. He's not pressed by media availability or the practice that's coming out there. He can literally sit there as long as you want and listen and take that feedback and take that constructive criticism, and then he has time to digest it. Because if you do have these big meetings in the season, if you even have the time, the coach's mind is going to be on the next opponent right away, and so he really doesn't have time to kind of digest it and come up with a better way to do things or better way to solve any of the issues that you feel might be out there.
How much of it is from the player to the coach, and how much is from the coach to the player as well? And is it amplified? I'll go back to 2014 when the Browns were 7-4 that year, and you guys probably felt, at that point you're in first in the division. This is going to be the year. Is it amplified on a season that had a frustrating conclusion?
Yes, certainly. You can have that amplification, and I've been in some of those exit meetings, especially after I became a little bit more seasoned in my career, where I sat down with the head coach, and the head coach was like, look, we're getting rid of the offensive line coach. If you sign off on it, we're finding a new coach.
Wow.
Or we're going to get a new offensive coordinator. Like, some of those things that were talked about were that high level in those meetings. And, it was all about the direction of the franchise and the organization. And as one of the couple guys that was typically one of the leaders on the team, like, they wanted to make sure that everybody was in this together and that agreed this was the right direction to go. And so sometimes you can have some real adult big boy meetings and you can sense that there's a lot of pressure that can kind of build, especially towards the end of a disappointing season.
Huff, how many times did you see things that you suggested or brought up in an exit interview implemented the following season or in mini camp? Did you see it pay off?
Yeah, I would say that the big thing is like scheduling, and that sounds so silly, but for people that have ever worked in an NFL building, like, things are literally scheduled to the minute, and every clock in the entire building is synced to the atomic world clock, because literally every minute of your life is planned out, because time is so valuable in the season. And so for players to be able to go to the coaches and say, hey, like, something as simple as, we'd rather do the walkthrough before the lunch, because then guys have time to go back during lunchtime, watch the film while they're eating, so they're doing two things at once rather than just sitting there and BSing about Days of Our Lives during lunch or whatever's on the little TV in the cafeteria. Like, we can actually productively get ready for practice in a better manner there. Or, hey, this coach, I think he could do a better job if he was helping run the scout team instead of this other coach, or, whatever that looks like. Hey, sometimes it's positional. Like, hey, this player we feel like, could help us in the future. So he's a free agent. We would really like you guys to be able to re-sign it. And in that case, sometimes those meetings even involve the GM or the player personnel director or whoever's in charge of players. Like, that was big too. But it went both ways. It was not just players talking to coaches. One of the big things that I felt was the best in those meetings was a lot of times when you'd sit down with your position coach, they would give you a very honest assessment of where you were at the end of the season. hey, these were the things that I thought you did really well. These are the things that you didn't do a very good job of. These are the things you need to work on. These are the things that I, as a coach, believe that you could do in the off season to improve on these things. And then they would shift the ball into your court and say, what do you think you need to work on? And what do you think some of the things are that you could do to get better at those? And I think it's a good way to kind of transition into an off season where you do have more time and you have an ability to work on some of those weaknesses in your game and some of those blind spots that maybe as a player you're not seeing when you're on that crazy week to week schedule, but that when it's all said and done and the coach has a chance to kind of review your film for the year, these are the things that come up over and over again and that need to get fixed before next season, because certainly your opponent is taking advantage of it.
You didn't have blind spots. We all know it. It's fine. You're a man of great stature and great vision.
That,
yes, of course. Were there times where, coaches would say, hey, you guys are in there? Because I imagine the way the players in season relate to coaches is probably different, and there are certain things, dynamics that are going on in the locker room. Are they ever trying to kind of understand, hey, what was actually going on in the locker room? What was going on with so-and-so? Or what did you think of this or that guy? Is that something that they dive into to try to get that understanding that, they probably in season can't get because they're so focused on game plan, game management, and winning?
That's right. Yeah, it is hard to get into some of the, I would call it interpersonal dynamics within the locker room during the season. And one of the reasons is, like you mentioned, they're just so focused on game plan and getting the players ready. But the other thing is, like, it's difficult to get a sense for that dynamic in 1 week's time. Like, it kind of has to play itself out over a season. And then once the season's over, the coach can look and say, hey, we weren't as good as I expected to be in this group, whether it be a position group or a personnel grouping on the field or maybe a package of players or whatever it is. And he's trying to figure out why is that, right? And he wants to get a little bit more insight from the players. And then a lot of times also you'll get, hey, we're trying to make decisions on who we want to be around here and who we don't want to be around here anymore. And, we had heard some whispers that maybe this guy's not the best teammate and he's not doing the right things. And like if he's a veteran, hey, he's maybe not doing the right things. And some of the young guys are kind of following in his footsteps because they like him or what, it's kind of high school stuff, but that's real people, human stuff that happens. Like, hey, there's this young guy, we think he can be really good, but the turd in the room is the one that he's looking up to. So maybe we got to get rid of the turd, and they want to talk to the players that are actually in the room.
Turd.
See those guys every day to find out, hey, is my perception of what's going on correct?
Accurate, right.
So when I go to the GM in our off-season meetings, I want to make sure that you guys have my back when I say we got to get rid of this guy. He's a cancer on the team. He's a problem. It's only going to get worse, and we need to replace him. And so I think sometimes that's a big part of it. Like, we want to make sure that the players sign off on X, Y, and Z personnel moves when I try to bang the table with the GM. And now the coaches have only so much say over personnel, of course, but certainly they have input, and they want to make sure that the input that they're giving to the GM is backed by the players.
All right, guys, let's do a little word association after that great input on the Hoff in terms of what goes on today and is going on today in Berea. When we put this season into perspective, there's so many layers to it. But I'm going to give you some names, some position groups. Let's start with Nick Chubb, Hoff. When you hear Nick Chubb, what comes to mind when you think of this season for Nick?
Iron Man. I mean, he played through some injuries, played exceptional, finished second in the NFL in rushing yards, was the biggest component on offense to success from a week-to-week basis. I mean, he's a guy that you're excited to see continue his growth in the NFL because he's already one of the 3 best running backs in the NFL, and you wonder, like, hey, with another offseason, if we build some other things around him, maybe improve a little bit more in the downfield passing, can he win the NFL rushing title and be sort of the undisputed best running back in the NFL?
I mean, he averaged 5.5 yards a carry this year. D'Ernest 5.3, Kareem 4.9. I mean, it really is kind of a stunning thing that we were able to accomplish on the ground. And you think about those numbers in the context of how many games people are putting 8, 9 guys in the box and daring us to throw. I think it's incredible. I think this year, he probably got hit behind the line of scrimmage more than we would have expected or he would have probably liked. But
Yeah.
Nick Chubb remained a stud and finished with 8 touchdowns on the season. But remember, he scored in 8 straight games. And that was, at that time, I think it tied the franchise record. So incredible season. Just such a good runner. And at times, I did feel like Hoff said that he was, working through some things. There were times where maybe, the first guy would be able to get him down, which we're not used to seeing. But when he was running hard and feeling good, he's still one of the toughest guys to get down in the league, and he's a danger to go the distance every time he touches the ball.
The consistency is remarkable. If you looking at this, you pull up his stats. So 19, he is at, let me get this right. So 19, he's at 5 yards a carry, 93.4 yards a game, 1494.
Yep.
In 2020, he's 5.6 a carry, 88.9.
Yep.
This year he's 5.5 yards a carry, 89.9.
Yeah.
He's 5.5 yards a touch, and he's 90 yards a game for his career. That's basically what he is for the majority of it. If his rookie year isn't the way, honestly, he could have went from Jump Street his rookie year, and that would have been similar.
He's never been below 5 yards a carry. His rushing touchdowns are 8, 8, 12, 8. There's a lot of that's just Nick Chubb.
Crazy
consistent. And that's what you want, right, Hoff? That's what you want from your star players, consistency.
Yeah, it was.
Consistency's not bad. Do you know how hard we worked to try to get our running backs just to 4 yards a carry? We couldn't throw the ball. Like Trent Richardson, if he was over 3.8 yards a carry, we were patting ourselves on the back. We were buying steak dinners for each other because we knew 4 yards of that 3.8 yard average was on our backs.
There's no question it was. Speaking of consistency, one of your great friends, Joel Bitonio, who had a really interesting and good exit interview today that I saw some of the stuff with the media. Joel Bitonio, who, boy, we saw him play left tackle this year at a very, very high level. Go ahead, give it.
Hold on. Here's a note on Joel Bitonio. Played every snap in 2021.
Yep.
Making it 5 straight regular seasons in which he's never come off the field.
I wonder where he learned that.
That's right.
Uh-oh. He's a threat. We got a Nancy Kerrigan.
Uh-oh.
Todd Harding. Let's go. All right, we got 5.5 more years.
I was going to say, you got plenty of time.
You got some
plenty
time,
of time. Right.
He's coming for you.
He's coming for me. Uh-oh, I love it.
He's such a stud, and you think about what he does week in and week out. Let's not forget that not only was he the best left tackle in football, Pro Football Focus just came out with their all-pro team. The Browns have 2 players on first or second team. Both are first team. One is Joel Bitonio. The other is Myles Garrett. But let's not forget the guy jumped out there, played left tackle for 2 games, and was the highest-graded left tackle in the league for those 2 weeks. And Hoff, we've talked about this so many times, but that's as impressive a thing as you'll see this season.
Oh, yeah. I really can't say enough great things about Joel. Obviously, for his performance, he was a guy that I got to play with him from his rookie year for the first few years of his career, and he's just a tremendous human being and a great leader on that team. I'm so happy that he's ours. But I think one thing that maybe some players can learn from him is that early on in his career, 2015, 2016, he had a bunch of high ankle injuries. And wrongly so, the knock on him was he's a great player, but he's injury prone. And for him to be able to overcome that now, and since 2017, the year I retired, he hasn't missed a snap. I think that can be a great thing for a lot of NFL players to look at and say, hey, where I am right now does not define me in my career. If I had a couple injuries early on, that doesn't mean that that's who I'm going to be, and I'm not going to let that name tag or label stick with me, because a guy like Joel Bitonio can overcome that. I can do the same thing, and I think that's a testament to his will, his desire, to what he does in the off season with his body, and how he takes care of himself during the season, the film that he studies, and how as you get to be a smarter player, you get more awareness of what's happening around you, and you're able to more easily avoid those injuries.
Hoff, you mentioned something there that since you retired in 2017, he's played every single snap. And so it begs the question, and I'd appreciate your honesty, as would all of our listeners. After all, we are like family here. Did you have a special talisman around your neck that nobody knew about that you then passed on to Joel, and now he has said talisman? Is that what this is?
You're going to have to buy me a lot more ribeye steaks.
Perfect.
That's perfectly summed up. Let's go to our defense, Hoff, and and what this defense became as the season went along, and also what it can be going forward, because still really young, really talented, really bright future there on that side of the ball.
Yeah, obviously the thing that jumps out was the performance of the defensive line, the pressure that Miles and Jadeveon were able to get, and what that secondary was able to do with our lockdown corners and the safeties. And JOK, his ability to step into that offense and be the versatile Swiss Army knife that we'd all kind of hoped he was going to be able to be. But I think maybe one thing that got overlooked a little bit is, for as much rotation as we had because of injury and COVID and things like that in our secondary, I think the leadership that John Johnson and Troy Hill and Denzel Ward provide in that secondary, to be able to still perform at a really high level with as much turnover and as much of a turnstile as the roster was in the secondary, is an incredible testament to those guys and what they're building moving forward. I mean, this easily can be the best secondary in football next season. And that gets me so excited, because we looked at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of question marks. We knew we had the talent. Took them a few games to get going. But since, like, I don't know, week 4 or 5, Z would be more on top of the exact date. But they have gotten better each and every week, to the point where it's easily a top 5 defense finishing this season, and where everybody is with them coming back, and the impressive young players that we have that are only going to get much better because they're in their first few seasons. Like, this could be the best secondary in the NFL easily, and the best defense in the NFL next year.
I don't think that's overstating it. I think job priority one, right, has to be to bring back Jadeveon Clowney. 9 sacks, the most he's had since he played for the Texans. And by the way, profitable the last couple of weeks. He had an incentive in his contract at 7, hit that with 2 against the Steelers, had an incentive in his contract at 9. Wouldn't you know, he hit that yesterday against the Bengals, which is nice for Mr. Clowney. You know, you talk about this secondary and what it can be, and I think you think about this defense just in general. Let's go into the assumption, because I do think that's priority one in terms of pending free agents is Clowney, right? So you bring Clowney back, you've got Miles, Malik McDowell's shown you something. Now you're hoping that a Togiai, that a Jordan Elliott, that they're ready to take that step in the interior, and you probably bring in, you know, Sheldon Day, I thought played well for you in a pass rushing role, but maybe you bring in, you're looking for maybe one more game wrecker in the middle of the defense. Your second level with JOK, I think he's got star written all over him. But there's a guy I want to talk about who finally got to play a big role yesterday is Jacob Phillips. And I think he was slated to play a big role this year. I think the idea of having JOK and Jacob Phillips with that length, with that speed in the middle makes you feel very good. And then the back end is loaded. This D gave up under 20 points a game the last 11 weeks of the season. Yeah. That's including a 45-point outburst in New England. Throw that out, and we're talking 16 points a game. This defense played at a very high level, and I agree with I think it's only going to get better. We need to address the offense, and if we do that, look out.
Yeah, that will be job one this offseason. We'll be addressing that, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on it. I am certain we will go around the league, take a look at the playoff picture coming up next. You listen to the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Whether you're buying or selling a home with Howard Hanna Real Estate Services, they're going to have you covered with a winning strategy. If you plan to make a move this season, they'll take care of you. At Howard Hanna, every day is game day. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today as we continue with the Joe Thomas Hour here of Cleveland Browns Day. Really quickly, as we take a look at the Super Wild Card weekend, Hoff. So it's Vegas and Cincy early Saturday. Then the night game is New England and Buffalo. Sunday, it's Philly at Tampa early, San Francisco at Dallas in the late afternoon window, Pittsburgh at Kansas City at night, and then Arizona, L.A. is Monday. What jumps out to you of those matchups, sir?
Boy, you went through them very quickly, and I don't have my notes.
I should have gone slower. You got Vegas and Cincy Saturday, then New England and Buffalo in the night game.
Yeah, New England
Saturday.
Buffalo. That was the one I was thinking.
Yeah.
Didn't know if that was Saturday night, but that one's exciting to me. Obviously, AFC East and kind of the back and forth between historically the Patriots and Bill Belichick and how they've owned the Bills. And I'm interested because Brian Daboll, he's offensive coordinator that's done a great job with Josh Allen. Former New England guy, worked for Saban down in Alabama. He was in Cleveland with us. One of the guys that's going to be probably the first names that you hear with the new coaching search. It'll be just fun for me to kind of watch that playoffs, and I always like to cheer against the Patriots. So any chance I get to watch the Patriots get stomped, I'll be there with popcorn.
Yeah, it's when you look at this, when you think about the way that it shook out, I think it's a pretty good spot for Cincinnati, Hoff, to make a run in this thing. Yeah. The way that they're playing, I could see them going all the way to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I like the Bengals. I think they're one of the teams that people are kind of sleeping on a little bit right now. I mean, they're really hot. They've got Joe Cool at quarterback, and really, there's so much parity in the NFL. You can just throw the rankings out. It doesn't even really matter. And I would actually, personally, I'd rather not have a bye because it seems like teams that have a bye, they just kind of coast and they just stay where they are. Whereas the teams that have to kind of fight and scratch and claw to get into the playoffs, and then they have to fight and scratch and claw to get that first round win, they not only do they build confidence within themselves and their team, but it seems like they get better. Like that competition, it's like, I'll give an example because Z's lifting heavy like I am right now. We're trying to get bulk.
Yeah, baby.
The incredible bulk here. Like you think that you've lifted as hard as you can, and then all of a sudden your buddy shows up and you crank the music up, and then you lift a little bit harder, and all of a sudden you're like, man, after 2 or 3 weeks of that, I just got stronger. Whereas the last 4 months of me working out, I really didn't do anything. I thought I was working hard, but I wasn't giving that extra 10% that actually makes you a better player. You're just kind of staying where you are. And I think when you're in those loser leave town type games that you get when you're in the wild card round, the winner actually becomes a better team. And I think that pays huge dividends going through the playoffs. And so for the Bengals, they're sitting really good right now with as good as they are playing on offense with Joe Burrow and an opportunity to go or to play the Raiders who are traveling to them and get that win. I think they're in a great position in this AFC playoff race.
Yeah, and they're going to root like heck, I think, for both Buffalo and Kansas City to handle their business so that they get to go and play Tennessee. Because I think, if we're being honest, of the matchups in the second round, if you're the Bengals, you would rather play Tennessee than Kansas City or Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think one thing about Tennessee that's interesting, though, is, like, what's Derrick Henry's shape?
And how does the reintegration of Derrick Henry into their offense, how does that impact what they have been doing? I mean, you'd think it's a plus, right? We're talking about bringing
it's going
back
to be a win. It's just a matter
an
of
absolute stud, but does he have rust?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a long while since he's played.
We would always say the only way you can get in shape for football is by playing football. And you can think that you're in great shape coming out of the summer. Oh, I was running every day. I ran my wind sprints, and even doing football without getting hit in pads, you feel like you're in pretty good shape. But all of a sudden, getting tackled 18, 20 times, bouncing off breaking tackles 18, 20 times in a game, it's a different level of exhaustion that your body's going through. And I agree with you guys. I feel like Derrick Henry coming back, that has to be good. But it's not going to be the Derrick Henry that you recognized earlier in the season because his conditioning just won't be there. So whether they decide to give him 8 to 10 touches or they try to give him a full slate and he just kind of starts slowly running out of gas down the stretch, I'm not sure what the strategy is going to be, but I don't think you're going to all of a sudden turn on the TV and it's going to be the Derrick Henry from the first part of the season because conditioning wise, his body won't be able to handle that many touches throughout the course of a physical game.
No, I would agree with that. We won't hold you to this at all, Hoff, but we might not get to talk to you for a while. So, based on where this seating is, who do you like? Who do you like in your Super Bowl early here?
So I like the Packers coming out of the NFC, and I like the Chiefs. And I imagine there's probably a lot of people that are thinking like that right now because it seems like when you watch the NFL from the last couple months of the season, the Packers were clearly the class of the NFL. I mean, top to bottom, offense, defense, special teams, they were the best. They were the most consistent. Whereas some of these teams, they were kind of up, a little bit down. But so I think the Packers, unless they stub their toe somewhere, they should get out of the NFC. The question for me is the AFC, right? Because I think the Chiefs are the best team. I think the next best team is probably the Bills. And then I'm going to go out on a limb and say the next best team is probably the Bengals. I really don't like the Titans until fourth. And then it's like Titans, Patriots, Raiders, Steelers kind of all right there. So it'll be interesting. The AFC is much more of a crapshoot to me than the NFC.
Hoff, always a privilege, always a pleasure, buddy. Hopefully get to talk to you again soon. Thanks for your time, pal.
Hey, guys, have a great off season. Hope to talk to you guys soon.
We shall.
The great Hoff, the Joe Thomas Hour. Yes, let's go. Let's go. All right, you're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily. Still so much more to come here on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau here for Indy East 4th. Excited to be part of the great story of East 4th Street, bringing music-themed atmosphere with Southern comfort cuisine and rooftop patio bar to East 4th Street, offering a unique menu items paired with barrel-aged cocktails brought to you by the owners of Char Whiskey Bar and Avo Modern Mexican. Indy is hiring. Stop into Indy East 4th Street to apply. Learn more at Indy East 4th on social, and you can get more there. So as this week goes along, well, we got a lot. We got some exit interviews we'll want to hear from some of our guys, maybe, when all of a sudden
Andrew Barry talks tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. KS a little later today.
That's
A
right.
little later today.
Yeah, so we'll see where all of these things go. But we are on to the off season. Crazy.
On to 2022.
Combine March 1st through the 7th.
Good grief.
Senior Bowl coming in a couple weeks.
I'm not ready for that yet.
No,
Diving
it
in.
feels very
Get ready.
fast.
Yeah. The next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You're down. Great job, guys.